Hello there again, my friends, and welcome back to Carpo's channel. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I guess you could call it different, but I generally speak from my own notes or my heart, but I'm going to be reading you something today because it's going to better define my position than I possibly could. I could sit here and say this is truth, and it doesn't really matter unless you have the data to back it up. And with an issue like lockdowns, I've been wanting to talk about this for the last 2 years. And if you're newer to the channel or haven't followed me for a while, I did make a few videos about the COVID situation and had my channel almost completely deleted. YouTube gave me strikes against my content, even for discussing it. And I went back and listened to the videos, and I had never given medical advice. I'd only spoke what I'd read. Hiccups. Whoop. As far as the data. And lockdowns were a travesty and a horrible decision. In the very beginning, when we didn't know exactly what was going on, and no matter who you are or what you thought you knew at the very beginning of this pandemic, we were all guessing on as to what the real threat was. When China locked down as severely as they did, knowing how China is, that's probably not surprising, but it was very significant, and it made us wonder, maybe this is a bigger danger than we realize. Then we were told to lock down for 2 weeks to stop the spread. At that time, I was for it until we could figure out what was going on. If the government wants to, use our taxes to help bail us out for a couple of weeks while we figure this out, so be it. And people followed suit, and it went along with it. 2 weeks later, it was another month, and then another month, and then 6 months, then a year. And the lockdowns, as we knew through the data that was coming out, had absolutely no real world benefit. And the damage that was being done was significant. People were having all types of mental health crisis, being stuck at home, not being able to work. These are bigger issues than people realize. So I want to read you this is from WashingtonPolicy.org, from the Washington Policy Center. And this is the data that they did regarding this situation. And so what it says is, the world has suffered from the COVID-19 pandemic for over 2 years. Medical providers recognized early in the crisis that certain identifiable groups of people were at high risk for the worst impact of the virus. Doctors and nurses realized that older people, those with comorbid factors, and immune-compromised people were the vast majority of the critically ill patients. Instead of targeting these specific groups and using available data, government officials responded to the crisis by using irrational measures that were driven by the perceived need to do something. Forced government lockdowns became one of the default methods of controlling the virus spread. That was in quotes, controlling. Thousands of papers have been published in the past 2 years looking at the effects of lockdowns on the viral spread. Recently, Steve Hanke, professor of Applied Economics at Johns Hopkins University, and associates published the most comprehensive meta-analysis to date on the impact of lockdowns. A meta-analysis is an intensive review and comparison of all the published reports on a specific subject. The researchers started with over 18,000 studies, and after 4 levels of screening, found 24 papers that would provide a stringent comparison. The results of their study are dramatic. They found that the lockdowns reduced mortality in the United States and Europe by only 0.2% on average. On average. That's 0.2% on average. They also looked at forced shelter in place, which reduced mortality by only 2.9% on average. Now, those were the ones that were known to be sick, that were forced to lock down because they were actually sick. And even then, it was less than 3%. The researchers had this final conclusion. While this meta-analysis concludes that lockdowns have had little to no public health effect, they have imposed an enormous economic and social cost where they have been adopted. In consequence, lockdown policies are ill-founded and should be rejected as a pandemic policy instrument. Professor Hanke and his associates offer reasons that lockdowns are not effective. For example, people most commonly respond to dangers through safe behaviors. Mandates only regulate a small number of people's actions, and lockdowns limit people's access to safe outdoor spaces. Now, let me make this very clear. I don't know if they're going to go on in this, but I haven't read the rest of it. But the outdoor spaces thing really, really pissed me off. The fact that, if a person wants to wear a mask hiking a trail by themselves in the middle of nowhere, so be it. But don't you dare close national parks and trails, public parks, and not let people go out and get the fresh air and that natural connection they need. This was the biggest travesty of the whole thing. The fact that outdoor spaces were closed, even when you were isolated. I have videos and pictures that I'm planning on doing in the long run. I'm going to do a documentary about this, and I have thousands of videos, screenshots, pictures, and these videos of my kids' playground that we used to go to. Just caution tape wrapped around the swing sets. I'm surprised they didn't padlock them. It was so absurd. I thought, this was right at the very beginning, and I thought, this is wrong, How can people not see this as wrong? And people went right along with it. And so it also says, in doing the meta-review, the researchers also looked at other non-pharmaceutical interventions. Again, the results are revealing. It says, quote, studies looked at specific NPIs, lockdown versus no lockdown, face masks, closing non-essential businesses, border closures, school closures, and limited gatherings, and also find no broad-based evidence of notable effects on COVID-19 mortality. However, closing non-essential businesses seems to have had some effect in reducing COVID-19, which is likely to be related to the closure of bars. So we can give it that. We do know the draconian mandates of government have had dramatic adverse effects on the economy, the education of our children, and the mental well-being of citizens. Government officials should follow Professor Hankey's research first and do no harm. So let me make this clear. On a final note, it is what it is. It happened. People have learned a lot about the incompetence of our own agencies, these three-letter agencies that pretend to be on the people's side. They don't care. And we also have individuals that even if they do care, they're basing it on the information that they believe to be correct and true. In this case, there was no evidence that these lockdowns would have any benefit, and we've seen the risk. And now non-COVID related excess mortalities are on the extreme rise, far beyond base levels, up to 20% or more in some places. And I don't want to get into that topic, but all the, problems we had regarding, adults not being able to work, I want to sum this up in the most important factor of what happened here and why I'm so upset about it. Because I have kids that are, fortunately, my oldest son is 27, he's grown, but my youngest kids are still in school. They're 9 and 12. My kid missed most of second grade, my other son most of sixth grade, his first year of junior high. Wiped off the maps. And then the next year, it was lockdown this week. No lockdown this week. Lockdown this week. Oh, we're closing the school. Oh, somebody had a case. Oh, you're tested positive. Now you stay out for 2 weeks. And I saw the effect on my children. I saw the effect that remote learning had. You don't have a kid going to school for several years and all of a sudden say, now you have to do everything on a computer with all of your class in little squares. It's not that simple for a kid to adapt. It really screwed a lot of kids' education up. And the rate of children who repeated a grade this year was twice what it was before COVID. In some places, 20%, up to 20 times, increase, or what was it? Yeah, I believe it was a 20% of certain groups of kids had to repeat a grade versus 10% before. In some of the worst places, the poorest places, it's a horrendous impact that it's had on our society. And I guess my only reason for saying this is just to voice my displeasure in how our, agencies handled this, which is well known and most people agree on that. But there are still some people out there, a lot of people, who really believe we did the right thing and that our government has our best interests at heart and that they're just doing their best. When there's money on the table, you got to think about that. You got to think twice about why so many of these other, you know, measures to protect yourself weren't talked about. I don't care what you think about horse dewormer or any of these other supposed like horrible substances that people have been taking for years as antivirals, but all of a sudden everything was said, no, it's bad. You just take the shot and you're good to go. Well, I can't talk about that because then I will get this video deleted. But let's just say that the fact that they don't want to talk about these other substances is one thing. The fact that you never once heard the CDC come out and say, hey, you should get out, get fresh air, get sunshine, take vitamin D, stay healthy, take some zinc, take basic precautionary measures to not get sick, then you'll be better off. They didn't care about that. They said, we're not going to be satisfied till everybody is boosted. And here we are, living in these absurd times where we just have to kind of bite our tongue a lot of the time. That's all I got to say on that, because if I say any more, I'll probably get censored. So thanks for listening, and do let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.